Ladies and gentlemen, members of the press, greetings and welcome to today's webinar. My name is Warren Stokes. I will be your host and presenter today. Today's topic is of a very broad interest, and it is how to make sure opportunities don't fall through the cracks. I found that in business, it's largely about identifying and capitalizing on various types of opportunities. So that's the topic of today. So we're going to cover a lot of subjects around this topic. One of them is how to actually identify and capture opportunities and then track them. This will also allow you to gain more visibility into your sales pipeline or your project lists. Another outcome of this will be able to accurately estimate income and revenue through the process of generating forecasts. I'll be showing you how you can actually generate quotes and proposal using our CRM called Prophet. And we'll be able to set some automated follow-up, and I'll pay some particular interest today on how to customize Prophet for your business. So our company is called Avidian Technologies, and we've been in business about 14 years, and we're most known for having a CRM solution that's built entirely in Outlook. So all of these things today that I'll be showing you, we'll do while staying within Microsoft Outlook. I've enjoyed working here for about 10 years now, and part of the reason is that there's a lot of variety. We serve a number of different industries: consulting, real estate, manufacturing, distribution, financial services, insurance. What they all have in common is that they use Microsoft Outlook for their daily email and calendaring platform. So we are, as I said, best known for having a CRM embedded in Outlook and have been doing this for some time. And we're a Microsoft development partner, which is what allows us to develop our software and embed it right in the Microsoft Office and Outlook platform. We've won all sorts of awards, got a couple of hallways full of them, but that's just a little bit of background on who we are. One of the big questions is, why invest in CRM? Oftentimes people rush to the conclusion that they need a CRM just because everyone's doing it, but that's not always the case. So I'll give you some examples of what I mean by this is that, in business, it's largely about generating revenues in one form or another. And think of CRM as a very key part of your growth strategy. So if you're looking to increase your revenues, most companies are, not all of them, most companies want to increase their sales. So a CRM solution will absolutely help you do that. One of the other outcomes is being able to get what I call actionable insights from the information in the CRM, something you can actually put to use. It'll help you get more organized, help you with your follow-up. That's always an area people talk about. It can increase efficiency of your workflow and your just day-to-day operations. Certainly a key part of a CRM is enhancing communications. Might be something as simple as who talked to the client or prospect last, maybe looking at the time and the date and the notes. So then the question becomes, well, why Prophet CRM? We're going to be showing you these topics today and using Prophet CRM, and it's not all things to all people. And in fact, most of the tips and techniques today that I'll be showing you could be used really in any CRM. But just a little bit about our product. The main differentiation is that it's built into Microsoft Outlook. Outlook users tend to find our solution very intuitive, makes it very easy to use, and that results in high user adoption, which is really one of the biggest challenges in a CRM. It's really not the technology anymore as a challenge, it's getting people to use it. CRM users often find CRM too complicated, too inconvenient, overkill, trying to hang a picture with a sledgehammer, just bouncing back and forth between programs. Kind of drives everybody batty, so a lot of times they just don't use it. So that's one of the key advantages of Prophet. By being built into Outlook and intentionally being designed to be very easy to use, you actually get very high user adoption. We've actually arguably stated that we have up to 100% user adoption because, as you'll see, when I send an email in Outlook or create an appointment in Outlook or create a contact, these things are automatically you're using the CRM. It's pretty cool. So the functionality of CRMs actually is fairly common amongst almost all of them, and it can include several categories of functionality, which I'll be covering in today's demonstration. Certainly a central database of contacts and accounts, the ability to manage opportunities, which is the main focus of our program today. Having some form of automation that helps you stay on top of your follow-up, getting useful information out of the system in the way of reports and analytics, and we'll be also touching on the ability to generate forms, oftentimes proposals, quotes, letters, things like that, right from the CRM, making it super easy to do. Prophet has a mobile apps that are available as well. And all of these functionalities will help you ensure effective follow-up. But I'm going to share with you a fairly shocking statistic here, and this is from Harvard Business Review, a recent study. And they found out that most reps give up on leads too soon. In fact, over 30% of sales leads are never contacted at all. It's just crazy. So this tells you really need some way to automate the follow-up. Basically, in Prophet, you can just set it and forget it, and you'll be able to ensure that you have follow-up. And the reason for all this is that the average follow-ups that a sales rep will do is 2 to 3 follow-ups on a lead. However, this study shows that it takes 6 follow-ups to achieve a 90% connect rate. So that's why you just need more automated follow-up. So what Prophet will do, it will help you capture the opportunity data, identify and capture the opportunity, help you get organized around it, and so that you can sort and filter and manage your sales pipeline more effectively, track the activity, the status, the stage, where everything's at basically, and then provide meaningful reports on it all. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go to a live demonstration. So let me just switch my screen over, and I'm going to start in Microsoft Outlook, and this is where Prophet lives. What you'll see is that Prophet creates a set of folders over here on my folder list on the left. You know how you have your inbox and your sent items and a number of folders that you may have created. Prophet adds a set of folders over here. You can see one that's called Analytics Dashboards. There's my account list. Here's my opportunity pipeline, and I'm going to start there today. So just by clicking on this folder, I am now in the CRM, and I'm managing my pipeline. Now the concept here is that we have what we call a grid view, and this grid view is intentionally designed to, it's basically inspired by Microsoft Excel's layout. People are used to the idea of rows and columns. So we organize the data that way. Each of these is a live record. I can open it up and take a look at it, but I just wanted to kind of get your mind around the navigation here. Each of these columns, just like Excel, you can sort by the column, like probability, potential revenue, or any other column. You can also bring other columns into your view. You can actually choose from any of the data fields in the database to put into your view. Then you can also filter by these views. So for example, if I wanted to filter this by a certain industry, I could do that: accounting, agriculture, architecture, automotive, whatever. If I wanted to filter it by the sales stage, it's just like Excel. I just click the button. For example, if I wanted to see all of the deals out of 113 opportunities in my sales pipeline, I could narrow it down to just simply those that have received a proposal. So I have 22 of those. I could then sort it by criteria, largest to smallest by revenue, or maybe I want to look at my high probability accounts, all of that have received a proposal. You can see a little summary as I highlight the fields down here. There's $191,000 in my top 15 opportunities, for example. So the idea here is it just helps you stay organized. One of the really useful ways to do that is just looking at the oldest modified date. I can go back and look at this list of opportunities by the oldest or newest modified date. And so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you the concept of how you can create views, and then we'll get into how we create these records. Views are just a concept of having a list that is filtered by some criteria. So, and you can see I have a whole, quite a number of views here. But this is a view I called Project Hollywood. And this is information which is a list of opportunities that all share certain things in common. In this case, it's about a project in Hollywood, a film I'm doing, let's just say. And you can see some of the contacts in here, familiar names I'm sure that you'll see. You know, here's some of my friends in Hollywood, and this is the idea that I can sort this by revenue. I can filter it down by stage. But let's just take a look at how these opportunities are created, and I'm going to start by opening up one of these opportunities. So it really starts with a contact, and in Prophet, a contact is nothing more than an Outlook V card. So if I click on Jessica's contact here, you'll see that it brings up her Outlook V card. Now in this case, we add a few buttons to this. One of them is to create the opportunity. Quite literally, with one click, I can create the opportunity as I've done here. I can give it a description. This is a customizable form, and a little bit later in today's program, I'm going to show you how these are all customized. But right now, I'm just showing you kind of the outcome of it. You have a status, active, won, lost, that sort of thing. The stages represent your sales process milestones. Think of these as just steps in your sales process so that you can always know how far into the deal you are. In this case, let's say that I'm in qualifying stage. You might want to know where the opportunity is by some region. We use time zones to track our territories. This one's in Pacific time zone. Probability is a useful field. And you know, by nature, probability is not an exact science. However, you'll start to gain some correlations from the analytics, which we have some dashboards that will give you this kind of information, which are things like conversion rates. For example, we know that about 10% of the prospects that we actually make contact with end up signing up with us. When they reach the product demo stage, a live demonstration, that goes up to about 30%. Now, we don't bind these two fields together because there are always exceptions to the rule, but it's useful, and this is what I mean by actionable insights. When we get into the reporting and analytics, we'll cover that again. You can give the opportunity an estimated close date. You can give it some kind of a revenue estimate, and remember, these fields are customizable. So you might have your fields called annual revenue or project revenue or monthly revenue or what have you. A very useful field in the CRM is this one called next step. And this is just in the context of making sure things don't fall through the cracks. So imagine if your salespeople, or for that matter anyone, project managers or whomever, always knew what the next step was on each opportunity or project. It was right in front of them when they're talking to the client. The date's there, and check this out, there's an Outlook reminder that's set to remind you to do it. Pretty cool. So I'm just going to go across the top of this form here to kind of get your mind around the capture of data, because one of the first parts of managing your opportunity pipeline is capturing information. So you'll go through an exercise where you'll talk about what information you need to capture. These are a lot of the standard fields. But over here on the right, you'll see that we have other fields. These tabs can be called whatever you want them. There's a total of 84 of these customizable fields in these 3 tabs. So this is it's a lot of fun to actually set this up as you talk about it. One of the things that everyone likes to know, for example, is where is my business coming from? What kind of leads are we getting? Where is it coming from? So this would be just a drop-down list of the different ways that you get business. Some people still do the lost art of prospecting. Maybe it's from a referral, a phone call, a web lead, or what have you. If it's a web lead, maybe you want to capture what kind of a web lead it is, pay-per-click, organic search, or what have you. In our business, we like to know approximate number of users. In your business, it might be something else. Almost everyone wants to know kind of what segments their customers are in. So here we have, you can see a drop-down list of industry. By the way, you can make these views shorter and smaller, and you can make this basically this record any size you want it. Over here we have some more information on qualifying, decision maker information, and so on. But just think of it as capturing a few pieces of key information. In fact, it's interesting. I found that it really only takes about 4 critical pieces of information to manage your sales process and your opportunity pipeline. For example, in our business, if we keep track of stage, where we're at in the sales cycle, probability, estimated close date, and revenue, we can actually generate some very accurate forecasts, and I'll be covering that when we get into reports. But it could quite literally be as few as 3 or 4 fields that you really, really need. So the idea is we've captured some information about the opportunity, and then we're going to do our tracking down below. Tracking consists primarily of several things: notes, emails, appointments, and so on. And one of the concepts is making it really easy. So there's a drop-down. I wanted to call your attention to this drop-down list on the right. It's where you have a list of predefined activity entries. So for example, I could say I made an on-site visit. Click, click, the note's in there. Notice it's time and date stamped, who put the note in. And by the way, this is a central database, subject to permissions, of course, but this gives visibility and that transparency to others. So if someone, if Jessica called up and talked to one of my colleagues, they could say, oh, Warren left you a voicemail on June 23rd, and I see that he visited you on the 26th, and so on. So these are just activity entries. There's no limit to how many you could put in here, and these are basically just things that help you keep track of the activity log. And you can type things in here, like I could type in, we discussed the new film that we're working on, and let's say that was by a phone call. Very easy. By the way, you could also enter these notes in from your mobile devices, and I'm going to just show you that here real quick. So I could go in here and just say I wanted to look somebody up, like Jessica Alba, click on a record, enter a note, and those notes automatically will appear here in my screen. I could also edit these fields from the phone or the tablet as well. So the idea here is I'm just capturing opportunity information, and you'll see that it's basically just a tracking history of all of my activity. These are all reportable fields too. When I get into reports and analytics, we'll be looking at these, like how many phone calls I made, how many meetings were set up, and that kind of thing. Email tracking is the ability to track emails to or from a prospect, and you have your choice in Prophet. You can either set emails to auto link, which is if I select this auto link button here, whenever I send an email, just an Outlook email to Jessica Alba, and I'll call this here demo for webinar. All right, I'm just going to send a regular Outlook email. You'll see that that email is automatically tracked here, and because I have this set to auto link emails with Jessica, any replies will also be linked here as well. It's pretty cool. Appointments work the same way. Now notice throughout Prophet you'll see various Outlook buttons, and it literally just opens up that Outlook form, in this case an appointment. Let's say I wanted to set up a meeting with Jessica here, and I wanted to do it at 1 p.m. Pacific time, and set up that meeting, invite her. Well, that meeting's going to be viewable here, but notice very importantly, by creating it in Outlook, in Prophet, it's showing up on my Outlook calendar. And that's pretty cool. I can also open that record right from the appointment. So the idea here is we're using Outlook contacts, we're using Outlook emails, we're using Outlook appointments, and we're also using Outlook tasks. So I wanted to show you the task function because many of you use it already in Outlook, and it's just a way to create a reminder, basically. Maybe it's to call Jessica, and I want to do this today, and I want a reminder at, you know, a little later on in the day, let's say 1:30 p.m. I can prioritize it a little bit if I want, and I'm just going to save and close that task, and I'll see it here as not started. But notice over here in my Outlook task list, there it is, call Jessica. I'll get that reminder, it'll pop up, and once I've made the call, I'll mark it complete, and this is just a way to keep track of your to-do list. Many of you already know this and use it, but the point here is that you can leverage all these Outlook functions in Prophet to keep track of all your tasks and your appointments and your email. You can also link files to this record, which is quite easy. You just click Add, and it brings up your Microsoft File Explorer here. You can link it to anywhere, OneDrive, Dropbox, network drives, doesn't really matter. It's just a hyperlink to the document. We're not creating a bunch of uncontrolled copies of these documents. That way, when I'm back on this record, I can easily access that document just by clicking on the hyperlink. Awesome. So now the next thing is incredibly powerful, and it's the ability to create a series of automated follow-up. Remember, we just talked about that, how follow-up is so incredibly important, and many businesses need better follow-up. So in Prophet, there's a couple of different ways you can do this. Here in the opportunity, we call it workflow automation, and it basically can generate a series of activities, reminders, emails based on the stage you're in. So the example here would be, let's say you get a new lead, a new new prospect, and you just want to send them the information, right, maybe it was a phone call or something, and then you wanted to make sure you stay in touch. So what you can do is launch a series of automated follow-ups. I click one button, and a number of things just automatically occur. There's a reminder after a week to call Jessica. Here's an email that's automatically been created. Look at this. It says, hello, Jessica. Thanks for your interest in Prophet. We're delighted to sell you all of our stuff, blah, blah, blah. Click send, or I could edit that if I want to, because right now it's just an Outlook email. I will also invite her to a meeting as part of my sales process, have another follow-up. In fact, I have a whole series of emails, reminders, and appointments that in this case go out through September, as you can see. Now, you can be sure that I won't lose track of this lead, because there's pretty much no way. If I miss one, the train's coming in a week, another train's coming, right? So we got all this follow-up to ensure that things don't fall through the cracks. And remember, the statistics shows and the studies show that 2 or 3 follow-ups usually isn't going to get you a high connect rate to new prospects, leads, or projects. You might need 8, 10, 11, 12 follow-ups. Then you know what? You'll be able to actually measure that and get that data from Prophet, which is kind of the magic here. I'll show you a little bit later. By the way, related records would be if you're using Prophet for tracking things like projects, implementations, service tickets, and things like that, which is part of what Prophet could do, but we're gonna stay focused on the opportunity management function in today's program. Anyway, I just captured myself some opportunity data, right? I've been able to track it. I know where everything's at. Now let's go back into my opportunity list and do a little bit more on that. I could go into one of my larger lists and say, I want to look at all my active opportunities, and I wanted to say, narrow it down by one or two different industries. Let's just say I wanted to do, what will I pick today? How about financial services? Okay, here's a list of people that are in my prospect database that are all in the financial services industry. What I might want to do is maybe I have a new offering, a new product, a new service that relates to all of them. I might just want to send them all an email, and rather than having to do it individually or sending out a blind copy or one of those kind of somewhat hokey email formats, this is great because it lets you create a recipient list, personalize it, select an importance. When I click create email, the first one pops up and it's just basically, you know, my content of the email. Now watch what I'm going to do. I'm going to start typing in an email here, but I use a lot of templates. This is pretty cool. Notice it's prompting me to see if I wanted to insert information from a template. In this case, yeah. So I click OK. Now I've got a personalized email that's been composed that's going to go out to everyone on that list. So put in a subject line, click send, and everyone gets a really nifty little email from me to them right through Outlook. Awesome. At least I think so. So now let's talk about that a little bit. Let's go back, and I just wanted to show you two things. One, what these emails do not look like, and then I'll show you what they do look like when you send them through Prophet. Here's an example of what they do not look like. These are sent through various web email systems. You know, I won't mention any brand names, but not that there's anything wrong with this, but look at this. At a glance, I could see that all these little JavaScript things and warnings, you know, that's not an email that someone sent me. I may or may not open that, but let me show you what happens when they get sent through Prophet. They look like an individual Outlook email. Well, here's my invite list. I sent this to over 1,000 people. And here we go. So we have all of these personalized emails. Same content, different name, but notice how they just look like an Outlook email because, frankly, that's what they are. They're sent individually as Outlook emails. Just thought you'd like to know the differences between those. So that is one example of things that you can do to manage your opportunity pipeline more effectively. And of course, it's giving you visibility into your sales pipeline. But notice, I've never left Outlook. Here's my inbox or my sent items. Here's my CRM. No logging in, no passwords to remember. You're already in Outlook. It knows you. So the idea here then, let's talk a little bit about views. Views are the ability to very, kind of granularly look at your pipeline by different criteria. How I create a view, if I first of all add a filter, a sort, or multiple filters and sort, like maybe I want to see only those deals that are in proposal stage, and maybe I want to add another filter that maybe it's the type of lead or some other criteria here. I'll just say comes from a referral, let's just say. All right, so out of 100 and some odd, I have 13 very targeted prospects. So that's visibility at a very granular level into my sales pipeline. Now, I'm going to touch briefly on the ability to create a quick report here, and then in a minute or two, we'll get into the full reporting capability. But notice throughout Prophet, you'll see this little quick report to Excel button. Well, it does just that, literally 2 clicks, and that view, sorted and filtered that exact way, is now an Excel spreadsheet that I've just created, and I can do all my Excelimation that I want. That's what I call it anyway. People know what Excel does, and a lot of people are very familiar with it, so we make it very easy to get your data out in the Excel format. By the way, not all CRMs make it that easy, just so you know. So the idea here is that I'm organized my pipeline. I'm looking at different criteria. I can go back in and market to my customers that I've already sold to. I could do some cross-selling, things of that nature, all sorts of things to stay organized, stay on top of it. And from a management perspective, this is permission-based, but you may want to have a sales manager's view where you can bring up all of the, in this case, opportunities that the whole company is pursuing. We have 879 active opportunities, and I can sort and filter by all these different criteria. And that's basically the whole concept of creating and managing opportunities. But there's more, and I'm going to talk a little bit about a related function, which is not all companies have opportunities that are active, but I can certainly go in and look at opportunities for a given company. So for example, I could see, oh, for this company, I've got 6 opportunities. I can see the status of all 6 of them. So it's very normal to have multiple opportunities for the same company. And in this view, I've switched over from my opportunity list to my company list, and this is a view of my accounts. But I could do it like companies in Wisconsin. All of these filters are very easy to set, by the way. You just select, in this case, state equals Wisconsin. I've got other views, and the idea is I can also set automation for a company or a contact, so that maybe I just want to ensure this is not an opportunity. I'm just digressing a bit because it's a related topic, and the question often comes up, well, what about just managing my accounts? Well, it's a very similar thing. You can do all of that. You can keep track of your notes, your emails, your files, and you can set automation for a company. For example, maybe you just want to make sure that you phone them once, call them once a month and meet them once a quarter, and that sort of thing. And then someday somebody will call up from a company and they'll say, hey, I'd like you to quote on a new project. Well, there it is. Click, click. I went up to my little new opportunity drop down and created an opportunity to track that project or that quote RFP or quotation. So that's how that would work. So we've got really 3 things that we're helping you manage. And I mention them all 3 because they're tied together. Opportunities are related to contacts and or companies, as you know, or as I've shown. Those companies can be tracked separately, but so can contacts. And one of the key concepts here is just having a contact database. Not necessarily all contacts have an opportunity associated with them. These are just contacts in your database. Now, you may even want to import contacts, and I'm going to show that function right now. So Prophet has a nifty little import tool that allows you to import data from an Excel format. So if I just go up to the little wrench symbol, the tools button, and go import data, you'll see that it brings up an import wizard, which is a little 3-step wizard, 4-step wizard that basically allows me to import data of different types. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to browse and find that Excel file that I just mentioned. You have to get your data into an Excel format and add that to my import list, click next, and then we do what we call field mapping. It's really simple. On the left are the names of the columns in the Excel spreadsheet. On the right are what they're called in Prophet. And I'm going to drag and drop company name over to where it says company here, first name to first name, and that sort of thing. And I can also auto map fields, which, because many of them have a direct match, all I have to do is click auto map, and the rest of them are all mapped automatically. Mapping simply means correlating the spreadsheet to the database. Click next, tell it what you want to do with duplicates, and away you go. Now, I did want to point out that this is a key part of almost any implementation, is getting data in Prophet or in your CRM. So that's one of the techniques that we can train you on or show you how to use, or do it for you for that matter. And that's a key concept of getting data in Prophet. But let's talk about contacts a little bit more in the context of them being actual Outlook contacts. So when you first install Prophet, it just basically reads contacts from whatever folder you've selected for the CRM. Some people just use their default contacts folder. Others will create a separate folder for CRM contacts. But in either case, if you want to mark certain contacts as private, which is the function of the little lock symbol or the checkbox, then Prophet will never read them. And if you check it later, it'll take them out of the CRM. Pretty cool. So the idea of marking them private is a useful thing, and just basically keeping them all. So what this does is it aggregates all the contacts into a central database so that they're all synchronized in real time, and yet they're still available through Outlook, which is how we're able to sync the CRM contacts with your phones, right, to the native contacts of your phone. So I point that out because when we're talking about contacts, I wanted you to be aware you didn't have to recreate them. If you already use Outlook for contacts, they'll all be here. Now, similarly, let's say Julia Roberts calls me up one day. I check my notes quickly, and sure enough, I just talked to her 2 days ago, and we talked about a meeting next week. She calls me up and says, Warren, I want to get a proposal from you. So what do? I go, new opportunity with contact. Right? Somebody wants a proposal. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out that's an opportunity of some sort. So I give it a description, fill out a few things, and away I go. That's just a quick way to create an opportunity as well. So that's the concept of what we're doing here, is we're managing contacts, companies, and opportunities. Now I'm going to go, while this is fresh on your mind, I'm going to show you how the fields are customized. For example, in the contact profile, this is a tab that we add that allows you to capture additional information about the contact in addition to what's already in Outlook. So these are just examples, but type of contact. Are they an employee, a partner, a vendor, a prospect, a client? Are they qualified? You might want to have some social media links, like, I show people that, hey, well, here's Julie Roberts' Twitter page. Click on that, and up it comes. Ooh, you can tell my age group, I'm sure, by my selection of demo data here. And, other things. You might want anniversary date. Hobbies, that's a good one. I'll show you a cool thing. especially in sales, you want to get a little bit of personal information as to what maybe people's hobbies are. So I have a view where I just brought the column hobbies into one of my views. Now, if I want to, let's say I'm going to organize a golf outing, and out of all of these contacts, I just want to find those people who I know have an interest in golf. So there we are, 62 of them. I can select them all, send them an invitation to my golf tournament or my golf outing, and away we go. The point here is that that's a customizable field that I'm using as a criteria for selection. I'm sure you get the idea there. So let's take a look at how we actually do that. I'm going to basically go into my admin console just by clicking on my login here, and you'll have a secure login like this, and it brings you into your secure admin console. In this case, there's a number of different things I can customize, but I'm going to jump in and show you the template configurations over here on the left. On the left, I click Configure Template. The opportunity template that I was showing you is basically right here. So this is where we design, and this is a lot of fun. You can play around with your 100 and some odd customizable fields. For example, if you wanted to go in here and look at the lead source information, you want to change the label, you just type it in. What you see is what you get. It's really pretty cool. You can hide fields. You can make them mandatory. By the way, I think mandatory fields are okay to a point, but don't get carried away with them because it's kind of counter to user adoption. But you might have a field or two. We do in our company that we require to create an opportunity to save it. But then if I wanted to edit one of these or add something to my drop-down, I do that. Maybe I want to go over here and change this from a date field to a drop-down list. I can do that. So there are 84 fully customizable fields. You can even change the names of these tabs. Click Edit, change the label, where we go. Now, I know I'm going through this pretty quickly, but it's really that simple. And as you know, or as you saw here, that drives the opportunity. Design. So I'm going to bring one of those back up here just so we can take a look at that. So when I'm talking about that template, there's that drop-down list of lead types. Here's my stages. All of that was done using this administrative console. There's also user management permissions and things of that nature that you will set in here. But in the interest of time, we'll move on. Why don't we look at some reports? So in addition to being able to just quickly generate an Excel report of any view, there's a lot of standard reports that you can do. And one of the first things I'll show you the hardest thing to do, customize a report. I'm just going to start with that today. I don't know why. So I go into a report, and let's say I just wanted to customize this report a little bit. Maybe I want to change the image here and the logos to something else, right? So I can choose from in fact, I'll just go in here. Take just a second. I'll just go in here, and here we go. So let me look up my graphics. I'm just doing a little customization of reports here. All right, video and graphics. Now that I've found a picture that I want, I can put it in there, and there we go. So now I've created a report. I've edited it. Now let's run that report. I'm just going to go in here and say, put in a date range for the report. Now I'm on a report called my pipeline report. Let's say I want a 60-day pipeline report. Now, if you have the permission, you can view anyone in your database. I'll just run a report that I have here. So in this case, you can see that it's a report organized by stage. And you can see that I have 37 opportunities, a total value of $418,000, average deal size. And look at this. It shows me a profile. And although this is very simple, it's a very useful report in and of itself because it shows me how many deals I have in each stage, a list of them all. But while I'm on this is actually very instructive here because notice it goes from stage 1 through 5 over to the right. And I have the most deals in proposal stage, the second most deals in demo stage, and as I work through my pipeline, I'm moving them through these stages. What if, for example, I had a whole bunch of deals stuck in stage 1? Well, that would be indicative of some kind of problem I got to solve. Or if I were a manager, I'd want to go talk to that sales rep and figure out why he's not getting deals moving through the pipeline. But it's also just handy to go into a meeting. I talked to a prospect earlier today that said, this is great because we do a lot of work in an Excel spreadsheet just to get this data. Now remember that all we're really doing here is capturing a little bit of information, actually, 4 fields, literally, like I said earlier, the stage that you're in, the probability it shows up in another report. In this case, the 3 fields are estimated close date, revenue, and stage. Pretty cool. That's all there was to it, right? Speaking of probability, another type of report would be a forecast. I jokingly refer to 3 types of forecast. One's called the forecast. It's when your boss comes in and says, hey, what do you expect to sell this month? And you say, I don't know, $100,000. And he goes, no, it's going to be $150,000. That's a forecast. Here's another type of forecast. It's called a guess cast. The boss comes in and says, what are you going to sell this month? I don't know, $75,000. Is that a real number? I don't know. It's just my best guess. Third type is a forecast that's bottoms up based on actual data and probability information. So I'm going to show you that. I can enter my date range, and all I have to have is 4 fields of information on my data, on my opportunities, and there we have a forecast adjusted for probability. In this case, it creates a total count, an average deal size, total number of deals, filtered by proposal stage. Why would I forecast somebody I met yesterday, right? Or a deal that hasn't reached the critical stage, and each one has a different probability, and so it creates a weighted forecast. So for the month, I'm actually got $221,000 worth of open quotes, but I'm forecasting $75,911. Cool, and I've used this methodology for many years and found it to be very accurate within the context of probability, quote unquote. But with some knowledge and guidelines that you'll learn from Prophet, which I'll show you next in terms of analytics, you should be able to get to a plus or minus 5% forecast to actual. Which who wouldn't like that in business? I don't care who you are. The sales rep, it's your income. Business owner or CEO, VP, it's your credibility and it's your accountability. So all very good. Another type of report that we can run here would be an activity report of various sorts. This one would have notes in it. For example, let's say I just wanted to see what was going on with the sales rep for the first, first 2 weeks of the month. Here's all my entries. You can see where I left a voicemail and so on. So that's some standard reports. Now there are actually about 30 of these out of the box that come with Prophet. So there's plenty of standard out-of-the-box reports, but you can also build your own using this wizard. I just go in here, give the report a name, and I start choosing my columns. That's about all there is to it. And you go into that designer tool I was showing you to customize it a little bit more. These are all traditional reports. When you run a report like this, you can print it out, you can email it to somebody, you can save it in different file types and so on. So very traditional reports. Now let's get to the cool stuff. Let's go to analytics, dashboards. I like them anyway. So basically the idea here is that you have a series of dashboards. I'll start on the upper left, and if I wanted to look at my forecast for the month, for the quarter, for the year, I could do that easily. And notice here in the upper right is my date range. On the left are my different filters to configure the quote. Maybe I want to turn probability off to see what my raw opportunity data looks like in my raw forecast, or maybe I want to turn it back on and compare it with probability adjustment. Maybe I want to look at the value of my pipeline over the next 3, 4, 6 months or whatever, and I can see how much dollar value we have sitting out there that's closable in the next, periods of time. Maybe I want to look at my forecast by user and see, okay, that's interesting. Let's zoom in on these people who have actually been making some sales, see what's been going on. I can do that with my cursor. I can hover over this or just look at the graph and see how much the dollar value is, what's closed, what the opportunity pipeline looks like. And you can pick different teams of people with these filters on the left. For example, let's say I'm looking at activity, the next one over. Well, that's a good one. We all know that activity drives results. So let's take a look at some activity reports. Oh, okay, that's interesting. A lot of activity going on. You can kind of compare it between people. But hey, let's look at a 90-day period, and let's look at a very specific activity. How many appointments have been scheduled? This is usually a pretty competitive thing around here. Okay, good. I'm in the lead. All right, 184 appointments. My colleague here has 159, and so on. So this is just basically the ability to understand activity levels with your different people, and you can do it by department, by group, by individual, or what have you. Pretty cool. Now I'm going to show you one where it's really useful, which is, this goes directly to our topic today, which has to do with follow-up. And this one shows us how many activities it takes to close a deal or to close deals. So in this case, it's showing for the last 30 days, these are actually accounts we signed up in the last 30 days, how many activities it took to close each of these deals. And on an average, it was 71. Wow. Been busy, obviously. But it's interesting. You can also narrow this down so that it takes out all the emailing and just all of the non-sales, direct sales activity, and I might just want to get right down to the top 7 or 8 activities and see how many of those it takes. It takes an average of 9 of these types of activities, direct activities, to close business. This is in our business. With Prophet, you'll learn this in your own business very soon, a sales cycle or two. And I'll get to sales cycle in a moment. But so what this tells us is I better have 9 of these follow-ups at least on an average. Might want to bump it up to 11 or 12 like I showed you in my follow-up automation, right? I think you get the idea. A lot of times I have people I could just tell they're jumping up at the screen, pointing at it. This is what we need. Wow, how cool is that? So all of these things will help you get better insight. So let's talk a little bit about insight into sales cycle. How long is your sales cycle? Well, it has an obvious value. Let's look at our sales cycle, let's say for a 12-month average. The team of people that I work with average 91-day sales cycle, about 3 months. Now over here on the left, here's where I'm going to show you how I can look up a user. I'll just start typing in my name, select my name. And so the team has a 91-day sales cycle. I'm averaging 73. Woohoo! Well, I can even go in and forensically understand what made it as long as it is on this last 12 months. Well, guess what? I had deals awaiting payment that really drove my average up in the month of October, and I remember that. So we don't call it a sale until we've collected the payment, but you kind of get the idea there, right? How you can use this. Why is sales cycle important? Well, if I'm not stating the obvious, if you can start collapsing your sales cycle, well, you're just bringing in revenue faster. Yeah. Speaking of that, how about conversion rates? Here's a good one. Let's start with an overall 12-month conversion rate of a team, okay? So I'm just going to look at that. So our team average is, what is it averaging right at the moment? 6%, okay? So this is our conversion rate. This is the rate at which we convert raw opportunities into new clients or projects or POs. Let me click on my name. What am I tracking at right now? 7%, woohoo. All right, and this combination of things is what adds value, what gives you that actionable insight, because you want to really look at things like, conversion rates, sales cycle, overall sales, ability to generate revenue, and start making some correlations there. Each business is a little bit different. So I thought you would enjoy taking a look at this. So one of the things we wanted to do is drill into and talk a little bit about generating documents, and I'm going to backtrack to an opportunity here, and because you can generate documents from contacts, companies, or opportunities. But an example here, I just go up to the generate file, and this is just a huge time saver, and it just lets you create documents quickly and automatically. So a quotation can be driven, if you wish, by the use of these drop downs in the products and services area. So I click on the products and services area, and you've loaded these in. That's just an import. And let's just say that I wanted to add 10 of a certain type of license. Let's just say 10 of those, add that. And let's say an implementation package. These will all be your services and your products, but I'll put a standard implementation in there. And I'll put some maintenance and support. We'd like to sell that too, one of those. Let's do 10 of those. So as you can see, as I do that, there's quantity, default price, you can edit that, and then price, and then what that can do if you click this button is update the revenue total back here in the general tab. But another thing you can do is you can generate a quotation from this. I've had quite a few questions about this, and I thought I'd just cover that. So up here is a list of templates that I've created. Some of them are Excel, you can tell, and some of them are Microsoft Word templates. I'll do one of both for you to wrap up here today as we are approaching our time limit here. So I'm going to call it webinar quote, and I'm just going to click create. This would be just the name of the file that you're creating. So what's happened here is it's basically just generated a quotation in an Excel template that then within a couple of clicks I literally have a quote that I can print off or send a PDF to the client. Is that cool or what? And if you look at this, all that information in this block came from the opportunity form, right? That's where all the data imported from the opportunity form. The rest is just boilerplate terms, conditions, da-da-da-da, whatever it is you put in your quotations. That is if you use quotations. I can also use this to copy this block here into other documents or what have you. Now, because it's Excel, I can do a wonderful number of things. Maybe I want to up the quantity to 25. Boom, look how it auto-recalced everything. I can have different versions of this that are automatically linked to the front page. I can even, if I go way over here to the right, you'll see some really cool things I can do. All of that from one form that I created, I'm now creating a graph and a comparison between our three products and our competitors' products and all kinds of cool stuff. Wow, that's so neat. But you might just have a little single-page quote here and click, and away you go. Isn't that awesome? That's one of the things you can do. Now I'm going to close that out, and you'll see that in the opportunity record, it put a link in here automatically as well as over here in the files area. So all I have to do is click that link, and I open it right back up. Check that out. Yeah. All right. We're on a roll here. Let's do one more thing to wrap up today, and I promise this would be about 45 minutes. By the way, if you have questions, you can call me. I'll post my contact information or talk to your account rep here, either one. But let's do one more thing. Let's generate a Word document. Okay, so that's we can do different ones. I have a letter of interest. I have a project plan. I have a proposal. These are just documents that are Word, Microsoft Word. So I'm going to click this and call it webinar proposal in this case. Hey, that's a good name. Let's just call it webinar proposal. All right, click create. It takes about 5 seconds, and it'll create, as you'll see, as if by magic, a very cool thing. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Here it comes. All right, so it just created my Microsoft Word proposal document, and look at that. We've got it prepared for Jessica Alba, my friend in Hollywood, Dark Angel Inc. And throughout the document, you'll see that it's inserted certain fields. See that right there? See that? So any of the fields in the opportunity, contact name, company name, or any field actually, you can insert into your proposal document. And there we go, proposal, pricing for, your customer name. Pretty cool stuff. In any event, this pretty much wraps up our webinar today. I trust that I've added some value to your day, and what I'd like to do is post my contact information for a moment or two. And I really do thank you all for attending today's webinar. The webinar is recorded, so you can access it later just through the original registration link. We also have a very robust YouTube channel. Look it up. And hey, ask us about our current deals that we got going on. A lot of cool stuff. Again, my name is Warren Stokes. Feel free to call me. We're here to help. Thank you all, and have a great day.